All right, well, good morning to everyone. In a great tradition of the internet, we're actually starting a few minutes early. I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's an honor for me to welcome this incredible group of people and leaders to the first ever Global Connect Initiative high-level event. And we know that it's also being live streamed, so it's not just the folks here in this room. My name is Catherine Novelli, and I'm the Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. And we have over 150 participants here today, including representatives from 28 countries, NGOs, telecom and internet industry, international organizations, multilateral development banks, and of course we're joined here by two very important people, Secretary of State John Kerry and World Bank President Jim Kim. And we're all here because we believe and understand how important it is to have internet connectivity for economic and social development, and we're united by that common commitment to do more and to bring more people online, and we have a specific goal of 1.5 billion people by 2020. We are planning to announce today, as a result of all your hard work, 65 initiatives that are going to support connectivity, and those are going to represent more than $20 billion worth of investments and projects, and we hope that there's going to be many more to come. We know we have a lot of ground to cover in a very short time and a lot of enthusiastic speakers, so I would just like to get right to it and to introduce a man who is genuinely committed to creating a truly connected world, from his distinguished service in the U.S. Senate to his leadership as the United States' top diplomat. Our speaker has demonstrated throughout the words and deeds that he is committed to connectivity and advancing the social and economic well-being of everyone. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the champion of this initiative, Secretary of State John Kerry.
Oh, press the wrong one. Thank you. For a tech moment, that was an inauspicious beginning. Kathy, thank you very, very much. Thank you all for being here. I think anybody who knows Kathy Novelli knows that she was quickly recognized by Steve Jobs, who hired her on the spot as the shiniest apple on the tree, no pun. But he hired her, frankly, because it takes a visionary to know a visionary, and he knew immediately that she brought some special qualities to the table. And she has shown that at the State Department. I'm delighted with her leadership on the free trade negotiations with Jordan, laying the groundwork for a transatlantic trade and partnership, the TPP, and particularly waking people up to the inextricable link between connectivity, global growth, and stability. The only thing I'd correct her on is I think everybody around this table is a champion, or you wouldn't be here, and you all understand the stakes. We are living in a far, far more complicated world than the world that many of us grew up in. The Cold War, the bipolar years, if you will, between East and West. And I've even heard Henry Kissinger sit and tell me how much more complicated today is than that world where one or two or three nations could kind of come together and pull things together. And people were still in that recovery period, even from World War II, for quite a few years, and then the fall of the Berlin Wall. So this is new. I can remember when I was on the Commerce Committee of the United States Senate, we rewrote the telecommunications law of our country in 1996. And believe it or not, it was overtaken by events by the marketplace within a year. Within a year. And almost every conversation that we had was about telephony. Almost zero about information management, information transmission, and infrastructure of an information management system. So we were quickly chastened, and we are now here at a very important gathering, and I want to thank the gentleman to my right, President Kim, for his outstanding leadership in one of the most difficult jobs. He, as all of you know, has always been an innovator, and it was true when he found radically new ways to deliver community-based health at the WHO and Partners for Health. And I worked with him in the Senate, particularly when he was at WHO, and we wrote the first ever legislation that we passed unanimously in the United States Senate to deal with HIV/AIDS. It became PEPFAR, and we're all very grateful for his current effort here at the World Bank, where he is now shining a spotlight on the vital role that online access has in fulfilling this institution's global mission, and frankly, fulfilling every one of our country's objectives. I'm very grateful, very pleased to see so many ministers of finance, presidents of multilateral development banks, and NGO others here, because your presence really underscores a fundamental truth, and it's pretty simple. The internet is essential to economic prosperity in the 21st century. As President Obama said last year, the internet is not a luxury. It's a necessity. So when we talk about infrastructure today, we have to include the internet right alongside roads and ports and bridges and dams and airports and power grid. And that's why I want this morning to urge every single one of you who are making decisions about investment and making budget decisions and making decisions about allocation of capital, please think deeply about the long-term contributions that increased connectivity produces. This is really mostly common sense, not even a revelation, but it nevertheless takes effort to create a critical mass and to move people, to turn an enormous tanker around. As we know, it takes a while. According to a report that was released by the World Bank, for every 10% increase in broadband access, a developing country can see up to 2% increase in GDP. Now, we don't need numbers to understand why digital access is so critical and one of the smartest investments that people can make anywhere in the world. In Kenya, where I visited last year with President Obama, a majority of people already use mobile phones to meet their personal banking needs. In Morocco, entrepreneurs are using technology to increase participation in the legislative process. Women entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia have formed cooperatives online that enable them to take advantage of economies of scale. And children everywhere are learning faster and learning more through educational materials and curricula that are available on the internet. Distance learning, as we call it, has become an enormous new enterprise. And when you think about the fact that there are upwards of a couple of 100 million kids in Africa alone who need to be in school not 10 years from now, tomorrow. When you look at what is happening in the north of Africa, in the Horn of Africa, and elsewhere in Central Africa, and the radicalization that takes place in filling a vacuum. So the internet is the greatest, fastest filler of a vacuum that we have. And if we use it properly, it will contribute not just to the growth and economy, it will contribute to stability and to peace. The examples are actually endless. They really are. And I think the bottom line to take away from this, that investment in the internet is actually an investment in people. Now, none of this is headline news, but here's the fact. We are still not taking full advantage of all of the advantages that connectivity, all the opportunities that connectivity affords. And I want to say to you, we're not doing it by a long shot. That's the irony. Out of every 5 people in the world, there remain 3 without internet access in 2016. It's unacceptable. And in the poorest countries, the figure can top 95%. And with that reality in mind, last year the State Department launched the Global Connect initiative precisely to bring at least an additional 1.5 billion people online by 2020. And this initiative has 3 interrelated goals. 1, to encourage finance ministers to make internet access central to all development and growth initiatives. 2, to work in cooperation with multilateral development institutions in order to double public and private lending for connectivity and digital technologies. And 3, to harness the knowledge, skills, and resources of the tech community itself to implement solutions for high-speed, affordable broadband access. We are committed to fully doing our part. And that's why OPIC is announcing today up to $171 million in new financing for a low-cost and rapidly scalable wireless broadband network in India. It's why we're announcing more than $1 billion in U.S. government financing and loans with our development agency partners. And it's why we're intensifying our own nationwide effort to extend broadband access to the less than 10% of American citizens who do not yet have it. And it's why we will have digital economy officers. This is something I'm very pleased with. We had appointed this, I think, earlier in the year, last year, and we've designated now every embassy in the world of the United States, that's 275 posts and embassies, are going to have a digital officer who is going to identify and break down barriers to help people become connected. We view this as the beginning. We launched Global Connect only 7 months ago, and since then, more than 35 countries have joined the effort. In my judgment, this is really the equivalent of the international equivalent of Franklin Roosevelt's electrification program 80 years ago. And he said back then, I mean, there was a conscious effort by the government to say, we are going to connect Americans to electricity. We're going to change life. And that's what Franklin Roosevelt said, quote, "Such a program involves new standards of living and will therefore do much to help promote economic health and strength of the country." And boy, did it ever, and does it ever still today, as we struggle with some of the distributive power issues, which are now growing significantly in their capacity to make a difference because of the improved quality of solar panels and the higher efficiency and lower cost. And I think they're very exciting things, which I hope we will be announcing with respect to that over the course of the next months. But this reality about the internet was really brought home to me in very personal ways when I was in Kenya last year. I spoke to a group of Somali refugees. Now, most were of high school age and yet had never in their whole lives in this time of strife and intense globalization lived anywhere except in that one refugee camp. But thank God, thanks to the international efforts and commitments of people to help, they were in school in that camp. They might not have been elsewhere. And the students that I spoke to communicated to me how desperately, they were very articulate, very clear, but they were also clear in their passion and desperation to complete their schooling, to find jobs, and begin their careers. And one young woman who was studying chemistry and biology told me that she hoped to become a doctor, and I'm willing to bet anybody here she had never stepped inside a hospital in her life. Now, the irony is that at the refugee camp, they had internet connection. I can't help but wonder whether that will be the case when they return to Somalia, unless we try to make a difference. Multiply that woman's hopes by 1 billion or more, and you can understand why we are here at the World Bank today to discuss this. We know from hard experience that not every story has a happy ending, and none of us has the power, as much as we would like to change that overnight. But what we do have within our power is to act so that a lot more people in a lot more countries are lifted up by the incredible technological advances of our age. And we have it within our power to steadily increase connectivity through the decisions that we make in our national budgets and in our international agendas. And we have it in our power to harness new ideas so that we can not only communicate faster, but also more efficiently, but also, importantly, widen the circle of online opportunity and ensure that fewer and fewer of our global neighbors are left behind. Why does that matter? Just leave you with a story. I'm not going to name the country, but I was in one country in Africa, and I went out to dinner with my colleague, fellow foreign minister. And it's a country with a less than majority, but significant minority Muslim population. I asked him, how do you manage that in the context of everything that's going on? And he said to me, you know, I'm really worried about it, because we have so many young people, so many minds that are not being reached in any way whatsoever, except by an organized effort by extremists who reach out to 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds and pay them and put them in an environment where paid they are indoctrinated with this radical theology and extremist view, and then they don't need to be paid anymore because they're bought in and they go out and become the next recruiters. And what the foreign minister said to me, he says, you know, they have a 35-year plan. We don't even have a 5-year plan. So that's the pushback against what is happening. It's not the bullets and bombs and what's happening in Syria, though we have to fight Daesh, and we will, I'm convinced, destroy it. But we've got to provide opportunity for these hundreds of millions, billion kids around the world who need a future. And it's in the not doing of that that we will create our own set of additional crises and problems. So that's what this is about in very real terms. And I want to thank Kathy for her leadership. I want to thank Jim Kim for his commitment of the World Bank to this initiative. And I thank all of you for being here and being part of this. And if we do this right, this can be as powerful a tool as anything that we have at our disposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for those words of inspiration. And I'd like to turn over to someone who has been at the World Bank's efforts to expand digital infrastructure, who has been a real inspiration on this entire project, and who has really helped raise the global consciousness about the digital divide and its relationship to poverty. President Kim was with us at the launch of the Global Connect initiative in September, and we're really very thrilled with the support we have from him and the World Bank, and so it's my honor to introduce President Jim Kim.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and I'm so delighted that Secretary Kerry's with us. When he was Senator Kerry, he was my senator from Massachusetts, and some of you may not know that he has a daughter who herself is a great hero in the global health world, and she was my student when she was a medical student. So our connections go way back, but I'm so proud of what you've been doing as Secretary, and especially on this initiative. You know, at these meetings, what we're going to talk about is the fact that global growth has slowed. And we're looking all around the world for what could be the drivers of growth going forward. And we talk about the traditional things, monetary policy, fiscal policy, structural reform. But one of the questions that keep coming up, and I think that we still in the international financial institutions haven't dealt with well enough, is what will be the future drivers of growth? Now, in a period of low commodity prices, we're telling many developing countries whose growth has been dependent on commodity exports, you need to diversify. But then the question is, to what? And what are the things that we know for sure will be valuable investments in the future? Now, there's no question in my mind that internet access is one, but let me take this idea a little bit further. At the World Economic Forum, there was a very interesting paper that was released by Klaus Schwab, and he argued that there now is a fourth major industrial revolution. You know, starting with water and steam power, then on to electrical power, then information technology, but then the fourth digital revolution is a much intensified digital world that's characterized by a fusion of technologies, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, biotechnology. Now, in all of those, what are the two things that I think that we know for sure will be needed? The first, of course, is connectivity. But the second, and I raise it just to illustrate the importance of this initiative, the Global Connect initiative, is the ability of people to engage in that new digital world. And so let me connect the importance of connectivity with making sure that everyone is able to participate in that digital world. Now here's my concern. We have to move quickly on connectivity, but we have to move just as quickly to make sure that everyone can participate. In many countries, we see childhood stunting levels that are just extremely high, 45% in Pakistan, 70% in Democratic Republic of the Congo. And what we know now from research is that these children's brains are literally not as connected. There are fewer neuronal connections, and most likely they will not be able to participate in this new digital world at the same level that their non-stunted colleagues are. So we need to look around and ask ourselves, there's so many different infrastructure investments we can make. What are the ones that we know for sure will pay off in the end? Connectivity is one. Investing in people, the reason I'm saying this is because what Secretary Kerry said is investing in connectivity is investing in people. Well, actually, those two things I think come together very nicely. Many economists are saying growth is going to be in the service industry, and that's going to require digital competency. So access is critical, but that other part, and I'm speaking directly, very happy that finance ministers are here. We need to tackle this problem of not only connectivity, but the ability to make use of connectivity together. Those are the two complete no-brainers. Now, we've been working a lot on this issue. We actually, the World Development Report in 2016 was about digital dividends. But again, what we showed, it's not just the connectivity, it's the software, it's the policy environment in which we're making sure that everyone has access to the connectivity that we are able to build. And so, you know, there are very specific recommendations that we've made. We at the World Bank, we've in the last 10 years invested about $3.1 billion in the ICT sector. IFC investments have been about $4.1 billion. We're doing as much as we can to crowd in the private sector, and we have had some success in some developing countries. But I think that there are many things that the finance ministers can do to ensure that connectivity increases and increases quickly. The first is fair telecom taxation. What we see in many settings is that because the ICT sector is growing so quickly, governments try to collect as much tax from them as they can to improve revenues. But we really need to move in a direction where tax systems are reasonable and predictable. And that's what's going to make connectivity grow the fastest, because the growth of the connectivity is really what's going to have the biggest impact on economic growth and eventually revenues for the government. Second, we think it's very important to use universal service funds to expand the digital economy. These funds are intended to bring telecom services to the remote areas, but often these funds remain unspent. Finally, it's very important to mainstream ICT throughout the government. Many administrations still have fragmented information technology systems with each line ministry or agency separately creating its own databases. And we've had so many nightmares of just this kind here in the United States in the healthcare industry, especially where every different organization built their own electronic medical records that were unable to communicate with each other. Unwinding that has been a huge problem. So especially in governments that are beginning to move into the ICT sector, we'd be very happy to help to build systems that will be interoperable and much more efficient. We're looking at this task. I mean, the fact that that the U.S. government has launched this initiative has given us all, I think, a really very powerful goal to shoot for. But the cost is going to be about $450 billion. And so finance ministers need to invest more. We will work with you to do everything we can to take concessional resources in the form of loans to try to put the deals together that will crowd in the private sector that will be critical to reaching this target. You know, I feel very badly these days about not having better answers about what diversification for many of you is going to mean. I feel very badly about not being able to tell you more clearly that this particular strategy or that particular strategy will work in the future, because we're still not sure what the economy of the future will look like. And when I was at Dartmouth, we did a little study, and the graduates, I think it was in the year 2000, we surveyed them about 5 or 6 years later. 40% of our graduates were doing jobs that didn't exist when they graduated. So the economy is changing very, very quickly. There are not a lot of sure bets in the world. In our view, investing in people directly so that they can participate in the digital economy and investing in connectivity are two of the surest bets that you'll ever find. Now, let me leave you with one story. Filippo Grandi, who's a new and fantastic, very, very capable High Commissioner for Refugees, told me that he was talking to a Syrian refugee in Greece. And he had gone through an extremely difficult and harrowing trip. And so Filippo asked this refugee, what was the scariest moment for you? And he said, well, there's no question. There was this moment, you know, I'd gotten on the boat in Turkey, and we were going to Greece. And there's this stretch of water where you lose Turkish connectivity and you don't yet have Greek connectivity. That was by far the scariest moment, right? When we picked up Greek connectivity again, I could be in contact with my family and everything was fine. So these are the things that we know we must do. We are there with you. We will increase our own support to all of the developing countries to put this in place. And we're very, very grateful to the U.S. government for their strong leadership on this initiative. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, President Kim. And I know that Secretary Kerry and President Kim have to depart because of their busy schedules. But we're going to soldier on without them, but with their words of wisdom and inspiration. And so thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
So just, I'm going to scooch over here. All right. Just a brief housekeeping as they depart, and that is that we are trying to, in deference to all of your schedules, we are really trying to be very efficient with time here. And so we have asked folks to limit their remarks to 3 minutes. And we are going to do everything we can to remind you how much time you have left and that your time has expired. And if you'll excuse me for being rude during this, I'm going to have to really move this on so that everybody who wants to speak has a chance to do that. So you'll have flashing red in front of you when you've exceeded your time, and when you see that, you really do need to wrap up. So, as has already been framed, we're all here because we believe in the power of the internet. We believe that we need to do more to connect people. And we're here to talk about not just why does this matter, but how are we going to do it? And what are the policies that we need to put in place that are going to make sure that once connection has occurred, it's going to be strong and it's going to be robust. And Secretary Kerry already cited the statistics around this, and I think, you know, it is fantastic that this entire idea is starting to catch fire. And we saw this yesterday with the IEEE Global Connect Stakeholders Conference that was held in advance of this meeting. And this was a fantastic way to bring the technical community, the engineers, the problem solvers together to start thinking about this from that perspective. And a lot of themes emerged from yesterday's conference, which I think totally dovetail into this one, including, not to single out the multilateral development banks and the development organizations, but really how important they're going to be and how essential they're going to be in looking at this, and a strong recommendation on a dig once policy, that we maximize efficiency with, if we're building a road, we dig once, we lay fiber at the same time. Second, that there's a vital role to play in increased, not just lending capacity, but also capacity building, as President Kim was saying, for those to use the internet once it's there. And we want to make sure that all that creativity can be unleashed. And third, that we need to think about affordability, that we need to think about how access can occur. We don't want to just have access and then have nobody be able to afford it. So I think these are very, very important. And lastly, being planful is very, very important. And that is something else we hope we're going to be able to discuss today and following on, is how do we have a plan, how do countries have a plan that suits them individually, and what can we all do to work together to help facilitate that. I'm going to start right now with our very first speaker, which is someone who is the chairperson of the Alliance for Affordable Internet, a former Minister of Communications and Technology of Nigeria, and herself a real expert in this area, and that is Omobala Johnson. And I will turn the floor over to her to give us some framing remarks.
Good morning, honourable ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I address you today as the chairperson of the Alliance for Affordable Internet, A4AI. This global alliance is an initiative of the World Wide Web Foundation and has more than 80 members from civil society, the public and private sector, and private sectors. Our vision is that everyone, everywhere, will be able to have a fast, reliable internet connection. Ladies and gentlemen, the exorbitant cost of the internet or broadband in much of the developing world is a major obstacle on the road to global connectivity. In some African countries, basic broadband costs as much as 58% of average income. The high cost to connect denies information, opportunities, and voice to more than 2/3 of the developing world's people. This exclusion from digital revolution exacerbates inequality, further marginalizing women, rural populations, and the poor. When the internet is treated as a luxury good, we sacrifice economic growth, jobs, and human potential. In my continent, Africa, what we need is to accelerate development. On current trends, it would take nearly 30 years for the world's least developed countries to achieve the same levels of internet penetration found today in South Korea or the US. This is an opportunity cost we cannot afford to lose. To accelerate progress and make universal affordable access a reality, we must act now. The good news is that we already have the tools and know-how to do so. We first must ensure that national ICT plans is on the head of state's priority list. This plan must include concrete targets for affordability and universal access for women and for men. Our research shows that the current UN benchmark for affordability must come down by more than half. Second, we need to end the stubborn trend of digital inequality on women and the poor by investing in public access solutions in poor communities and digital skills education in public schools. Third, we must replace short-sighted measures which ultimately penalize the poor, such as luxury tariffs on devices and services, excess royalties on technology patents, or multiple sales taxes on airtime, with a more long-term approach that encourages the growth of jobs and innovation through a diversified ICT sector and ensures that a fair share of the resultant revenues stay in the country where they are generated. At A4AI, we believe that national vision and leadership are the most important ingredients for success. So let me be very clear. Everyone in this room today has an important part to play, and we expect you to play it. A4AI will be pleased to lead a multi-stakeholder working group to develop specific recommendations on the investment best practices and strategies needed to achieve the global goal of universal and affordable access. Honourable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, A4AI and the Web Foundation stand ready to work with you, all of you, to make universal access a reality for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being on time and for your offer to do a workshop. I think that's huge. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of activity if we're going to continue forward. So, thank you very much for those insightful comments. Next, we're going to have Werner Hoyer, the president of the European Investment Bank.
Thank you very much. Of course, connectivity is a crucial factor for prosperity of all nations. But broadband access in developing countries often functions as a substitute for non-existent physical infrastructure and transport links, so it's even more important there. It's also a way to extend financial services to people who can't reach a bank, allowing them to carry out current account transactions by SMS. We have, as the EU bank, a 20-year-old track record of financing telecoms infrastructure, mostly in Europe, and a current exposure in the sector of more than 17 billion euros, making us one of the biggest lenders in this field. Since 2008, we have loaned 22 billion in financing infrastructure and RDI in broadband communications technology and digital content. But while we do 90% of our business in Europe as the EU bank, we are committed to helping deliver in the EU development goals outside Europe. Last year, I give you some examples. We signed a 9 million loan that will bring high-speed broadband to every household in the Caribbean island of St. Martin. Or with the help of the EU Africa Infrastructure Trust Fund, we have backed 11,000 miles of underwater cable in the last few years, connecting 20 West African countries to Europe. It also funded a link between Africa and the Seychelles, which quadrupled internet access in those Indian Ocean islands. We're also very excited about a new project to support rural communities in Cameroon and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rural communities are actually becoming more and more isolated because telecommunications upgrades focus on urban areas. So the EIB is poised to loan 27 million to extend mobile networks here. That would mean helping to fund an alternative infrastructure company whose ambition over the next 5 years is, through this project and others, to connect 65 million people in rural areas. So these are just a couple of examples. It is all very much in line with the Africa-EU Infrastructure Partnership and its key goal to use ICT as a way to tackle poverty and support growth and socioeconomic development. But we need to do much more if we want to reach 1.5 billion people. We also need more partnerships that can take the foundations we lay and construct on them the massive investments the development world needs. Partnership with multilateral development banks, governments, other international organizations, partnership with private investors. And I put the emphasis on that because we consider ourselves a crowding-in bank. We believe that our estimates, or we estimate that the leverage factor we can expect from EIB lending in this ICT sector is about 19. So it's a considerable argument in order to use new financial instruments in order to make progress in this very, very important field. We are offering also advisory support to increase the investment readiness of such public-private initiatives which focus on rural areas and high development impact within and outside the European Union. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, and I think you've highlighted that we don't just need innovation in terms of technology, we also need innovation in terms of financing, and so we have the right minds around this table to think about how that can come to play. Our next speaker is going to be Dan Schulman, CEO of PayPal.
Thank you, Madam Undersecretary. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I firmly believe that the only way we can tackle some of these very pressing and thorny and stubborn problems is a partnership between the private and public sectors, between NGOs and academia. So it's an honor to be here with you. There's a saying that it's expensive to be poor. And that could not be more true in financial services. Unfortunately, the things that many of us take for granted in this room and in many places, like cashing a check, paying a bill, getting a loan, or sending money to a loved one, is extremely time-consuming and very expensive. In the US, it can cost 2 to 5% just to cash a check. And once you cash that check, all you have is money. And then if you want to pay a bill, you need to stand in line again. And for a typical telecom bill or a cable bill that could cost $50 or $60, you can pay $10 for a money order fee. If you want to get a loan and you're outside the system, you can go to payday loans, you can go to other places that can charge up to 200 to 300% interest. There are about 2 to 3 billion people, depending on estimates, in the world that live outside of the financial system. In the United States, it's 70 million adults that are underserved. And in developing countries like the United States, somewhere between 50%, and I've seen studies that say up to 66% of US families live paycheck to paycheck. That means that they are one event away from a downward spiral. A health crisis, a car repair, all of these things can be disastrous for them. And in a world of technology, that's ridiculous. We should be able to do basic consumer financial transactions quickly, easily, more securely, and importantly, less expensively. With software and mobility, where most of the world will eventually have all the power of a bank branch in the palm of their hand, we should be able to do those transactions I mentioned at not just half the cost, but maybe as low as 1/6 the cost of a typical financial institution. We believe that from a fintech perspective, from a financial services perspective, democratizing financial services is crucial. And what that means is that managing and moving money should be a right for all of our citizens, not a privilege for the affluent. So we stand committed to working with everybody, and we believe that this goal is not just a noble one, but an attainable one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think what we've heard from this first session is really the need to think creatively, to address the pernicious problems that come from being on the wrong side of the digital divide, and to look at how can we support the poor, women, girls, how can we look at rural communities, how can we look at new financial instruments, both for setting up the internet and then once they're up for things like mobile banking, and that gives us a real challenge for going forward. Our last speaker for this session is from Telenor, a company who's done a lot of innovation in this area, and so we're delighted to have Sigve Brekke here.
Thank you, Undersecretary Novelli. I'm representing Telenor, company originated from Norway with investments in Europe, but more importantly, 15 years ago, we started to take positions in Asia. And during those 15 years, we are now close to 200 million in our Asian operations. And the last country we went into was Myanmar, and just to show how fast this development goes, 17 months ago, we launched our services, 1% internet penetration, 7% mobile penetration. 17 months thereafter, the penetration on the mobile is 60%, and to our big surprise, 55% of them are already using internet. This just shows how powerful internet is and how fast this goes. I have 3 wishes, seeing all the government representatives around the table. And those 3 wishes are barriers to deliver on the objective here. None of them are technology related, none of them are financial related, because there is no limitation now for us to take these positions, but they're all related to government regulations and policies. The first one is financial inclusion. We need to make inefficient cash economies going digital, and with that include the hundreds of millions of people that do not have any bank relations. Fortunately, the Pakistani government allows us to actually own a bank. So we bought a microfinance bank in Pakistan. We have currently 20 million customers that we provide not only with basic services like remittance or bill payment, but also with microfinancing and saving solutions. Unfortunately, there are very few other governments that allow us to do that. The banking regulations are way too restrictive, and they are trying to protect the commercial banks rather than looking at how can we get banking solutions to all the unbanked. We have 1.5 million point of sales in our Asian operations. I would like all those 1.5 millions to be bank branches. So we need banking regulations. Secondly, health and education. We do life insurance, accident insurance in India and Pakistan. We do birth registration in Pakistan. We are working together with the government of Bangladesh to bring universities out to the villages. We use our data to predict dengue fever, where the masses are moving. Unfortunately, the governments do not see it the same way. And we really would like to have partnership with the government, allowing us to take those type of services and bring them on the basis of internet out to the mass markets. The third wish I have is related to taxation and the payment of licenses and spectrum. I really hope that the government could take a longer view on how to bring internet to the masses, rather than trying to maximizing upfront payment. And some countries do this right, some don't. And this is a major obstacle now for us to continue to roll out the services and serve all those customers out in the villages. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And that concludes our first sort of framing session. And we're going to move to our second topic, which is what are people doing in this space? And, you know, since we launched the Global Connect initiative this fall, it has been amazing how much progress we've made in just 6 months. And so we're going to hear about some of the real innovations that are taking place. We've just heard about the need to do more financial inclusion. So one of the great examples of this is the M-Pesa program, among others. And so to speak more about this, my friend and colleague, Treasury Deputy Secretary Sarah Raskin.
Thank you, Undersecretary Novelli, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for your participation in today's meetings. I'm pleased to be opening the second session of this important event, which will focus on the steps that governments, the private sector, and development institutions like the World Bank and the regional development banks are taking to expand access to the internet to every person in the world. With the impressive panelists here today, we're going to hear more about the pieces of the puzzle that must be in place in order to bring more people online, what policies and infrastructure are needed, and of course, how to get the right mix of financing. Access to the internet can have a powerful impact in driving economic development and improving people's everyday lives. Investments in information and communications technology frequently lead to innovative solutions to development challenges and can help countries leapfrog over outdated technologies. This year's World Development Report on digital dividends, for example, highlights how internet access can improve development project outcomes across a broad range of sectors, including agriculture, health, and education. Now, we at Treasury are pleased to support the Global Connect initiative, where we'll advance the dialogue on how to bring 1.5 billion people online by 2020. More specifically, we at Treasury are embracing the Global Connect initiative because of its potential to enhance a top priority for us. And this priority is the priority of financial inclusion. As many of you know, financial inclusion is the ability of all people, women and men around the globe, to be included in a financial system that provides access to credit on safe and sustainable terms, that provides for the ability to save and build a financial cushion, and that provides access to objective financial information. The internet and the gadgets we use to access it, personal computers, smartphones, and other devices, provide us, as we all know, with unprecedented connection to one another and to the world. Think about this. In 2003, 500 million devices were connected to the internet. By 2010, the number of devices connected to the internet increased to 12.5 billion, even while the world's population had increased by about 8%. By some estimates, in 5 years, 50 billion devices will be connected to the internet. As the Digital Dividends Report highlights, the internet can decrease information barriers, lower transaction costs, and increase innovation vital to financial inclusion. Access to a range of quality and affordable financial services like payments, savings, credit, and insurance allows individuals to manage life's ups and downs, build assets, and take advantage of economic opportunities such as starting a small business or taking out a loan. At the macro level, financial inclusion has a direct bearing on national economic growth rates. Studies have shown that countries which successfully increase access to credit experience a corresponding increase in GDP growth, because lowering transaction costs and borrowing constraints for individuals and businesses lead to an overall increase in a country's aggregate output. Technological innovation and the internet are the mechanisms that make widespread, affordable financial access to scale a reality. So I am out of time, but I want to encourage our panelists to talk through some of the important investments in financial infrastructure that we have seen over the last period of time, and to give you all a sense as to the enormous potential as to why this work is so important. We recognize that expanding broadband coverage can be challenging for policymakers, particularly in remote areas where the short-term business case might not be obvious for private sector institutions. To reach 1.5 billion people, 1.5 billion people, policymakers need to prioritize the development of broadband networks and other information and communications technology projects through investments in the infrastructure and policies that are needed to support robust and open access to the internet. The Global Connect initiative is a challenge to all of us to redouble our efforts to attain this goal, which promises to have a multiplier effect on financial inclusion for millions of people across the globe. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for putting that in a finance minister context, which is hugely important here. I'd like to turn to our next speaker, who is an absolute pioneer in the world of connectivity, and who was there at the beginning and is an incredible visionary in this field, and we're very pleased to have him here in his capacity as the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, but also in his capacity as one of the wisest people in this field. So, Tom.
I think my 3 minutes just expired at that. I can't say anything beyond that. Thank you very much, Madam Undersecretary. If the topic for this session is what are the people doing, let's start with what are the people doing, the big P people doing. And they're taking advantage of this incredible new connectivity around the world. The Millennium Development Goal to reduce poverty was beaten and exceeded because of connectivity for voice and text and basic services like that. The industry did a fabulous job of building out for voice and text. The question now becomes, what happens with broadband access to the internet? Because you all live in a world of commodity valuations and what are the effects of commodities. I would submit that the most important commodity in the 21st century is broadband connectivity. It defines everything else that happens everywhere else in the economy. And getting from a ubiquitous phone network to a ubiquitous broadband network will determine whether or not the next generation gets swallowed up in a digital divide or realizes the digital dividend. And I would submit that how we get there is based on two challenges and one philosophy. The first challenge is obviously the physical constraints. Secretary Kerry talked about FDR and electrification. We did the same thing with telecom. How do you provide economic support to build out into high-cost areas. We've just gone through this at our government. In our government, he referenced it through our agency, where we're now requiring you must build broadband. And where we are, then the second issue is fiscal. How do you deal with the realities of individuals who need that kind of connectivity? We've just gone through a similar kind of activity where we have redone our support program for low-income Americans to provide for broadband access. And so if you have those two challenges, then you have the third philosophical issue, which is you must assure that there is openness to the network. There is a virtuous cycle of an open network driving new services, growing the economy, creating demand for more network, and going like this in this virtuous process. Again, we've tried to establish a way of doing that with our open internet rules, the dreaded yellow card. We've tried to establish that with our open internet rules. And so I would submit that if we are going to leap the digital divide to enjoy the digital dividend, we need to tackle our physical problems, our fiscal problems, and we need to ensure that our networks are fast, fair, and open. Thank you.
Thanks for that roadmap, Tom. I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth Littlefield, who's been an incredible pioneer on the financing side, which we have talked about. And Elizabeth has actually advanced connectivity projects in Myanmar, Kenya, India, and beyond. And so, Elizabeth, please tell us how to do it right.
Well, I'm not sure I can do that, but I can tell you a little bit about our humble experience. But first, Kathy, I really applaud this event, your leadership in this initiative, as well as the very ambitious goals. So as the U.S. government's development finance institution, OPIC's mandate, of course, is to catalyze private sector investment in the service of development in the 150-odd countries where we are open for business. But of our $20 billion portfolio of those private sector loans right now, less than $1 billion of that is invested in ICT, although it's growing very, very quickly. And we'd like to change that. We've done about 40 projects in about 25 countries, ranging from e-commerce to mobile banking to telecoms infrastructure like towers and subsea cables. We've done things like mobile voice and data networks to wireless broadband. And some of the interesting connectivity projects are doing really interesting things on the ground. Like, for example, driving $6 a month private school networks in Kenya who are taught by not highly trained teachers who are using curriculum delivered on tablets as a way of ensuring quality and consistency and very high test results coming out of that. Or payment systems for off-grid power in rural areas in Africa, such as in Nigeria. Mobile health, mobile banking. These are the kind of initiatives that are being driven. Now we see a number of challenges, of course, in providing the financing that is required for the very high capital costs that connectivity can require. Challenges like the affordability of internet services at the retail end, regulatory challenges. The need for ICT policies that are designed to attract foreign direct investment, that are designed to promote competition and promote development, and of course the challenges of coming up with the necessary financing, currency mismatches and the like. Secretary Kerry mentioned at the top the latest commitment that OPIC has made in this sector. I thought I would just mention that one. It's $170 million for a low-cost, rapidly scalable wireless broadband for the last mile in India that is expected to reach 6.5 million customers for $10 a month internet services. So we would like to do much, much more of this. We're in a growth phase. We know we don't have the capital to do it on ourselves, and we really do enjoy working together with our partners, the fellow development finance institutions that you'll have here around the table, whether it's the EIB, the EBRD, IDB, as well as AIIB, with whom we'd very much like to join forces to achieve these ambitious goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Lots of innovation going on there. I'd like to now turn over to the Minister of Finance of Canada for his remarks. Minister Morneau.
Well, thank you, Madam Undersecretary. I'll give you a little bit of insight from the north, but I thought maybe I'd start with a personal story. A number of years ago, I founded a boarding school for girls in a refugee camp in Camp Kakuma in Kenya for Somalian and South Sudanese girls. And about 3 years ago, I went back to the camp to see how it was going, and the girls came to me, and they were incredibly thankful for having founded this school, of course, and they were getting an education. But they said to me, you know, now we're at school, we need to be digital. And, you know, I took it away and decided to go back and to make them digital. So about a month ago, I had a Skype call with these girls, just, again, a Skype call with these girls at Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya. And I was so heartened to hear that they are now in the process of figuring out through the internet how they can apply, the 62 girls who are going to graduate next February from this school for the first graduating class, how they can apply to American and Canadian universities for the next stage of their education. And so it's stories like that that bring the reality home of what we can achieve. So, you know, that's one of those beacons of hope that we see in what is really challenging. I mean, we know that affordable and reliable internet connectivity is so difficult for women and for marginalized groups around the world. And, you know, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of our Canadian perspective. So first of all, in Canada nationally, we committed as a new government in our national efforts $500 million over the next 4 years to connect our rural and our Indigenous people to the internet. So that's something we announced this past month. And internationally, we're proud to have provided the World Bank with funding to support this year's World Development Report, Digital Dividends. I thought I'd just talk a little bit about our support for individuals and communities, which I think are well aligned with the Global Connect initiative. In sub-Saharan Africa, we're supporting women's access to information and tools on agricultural practices, weather patterns, and diseases affecting plants. In Haiti, we're providing technical assistance and ICT equipment to support the modernization of the country's tax and customs administration. And throughout the Caribbean, in participation with the World Bank and the IMF, we're promoting the use of technology as a basis for modernization of the public financial management. And finally, through the International Development Research Center, we've pioneered research on ways in which information and communication technologies can be used to achieve sustainable development results in places like Mongolia, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. So we're proud of these efforts. We believe they're aligned with the Global Connect initiative. And I guess a couple of commitments from Canada. We will encourage multinational development banks, including the World Bank, to prioritize infrastructure investments supporting information and communications technology. And we're pleased to announce our endorsement of the Global Connect initiative and its principles, and we look forward to continuing to work together on this, you know, really important global initiative.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the story. I think it makes it all so much more personal. So thank you. And thanks for the Government of Canada's support for this. I'd like to now turn to Suma Chakrabarti, who is an incredible innovator in the finance field. And we're very much looking forward to hearing what the EBRD is up to in this vein.
Well, thanks very much, Kathy. Thanks for the invitation. I can start by saying we fully endorse this initiative. It's very relevant for our operations. I should just say, for those who don't know, EBRD is a multilateral development bank. It's owned by 67 shareholders, despite the title with an E at the beginning. Actually, our biggest shareholder is the United States. And it's a global bank, but with a European heart, I guess. And we're 25 years old. We're very focused, a bit like OPIC, on the private sector. So 80% of what we do is invest in projects directly through the private sector. We also provide policy advice. Our geography is also now expanded. We started off in Central and Eastern Europe, but we're now in North Africa, Central Asia, Turkey, Casablanca to Vladivostok, as a soundbite goes. Connectivity is fundamental to what we're doing, and now we see it as essential for the ability to innovate, for economic inclusion, as everyone else has said, for social cohesion, and for regional integration, which is very important to us as well. And for us, over the years, innovation and connectivity has been very closely linked to ICT. So our total investment in ICT over the years is about 4 billion euros in just over 170 projects. But 2 years ago, we decided to go for a new initiative, a knowledge economy initiative, really which is aimed at improving connectivity. And one of the key themes in this, there are 4 themes in this initiative: technological upgrading, small technology-based companies, innovation, but also information systems. And the connectivity part is strongly part of the information systems thing. So we're doing things like modern ICT infrastructure investments, fast and reliable broadband, telecom regulation a lot. We work quite closely with Telenor on some of these issues, and national broadband acceleration strategies. We've been pushing e-commerce and cloud computing in many of our countries too. Now, this has involved EBRD financing and also policy reform dialogue with a number of governments, which is very important, on network expansion, on improving the quality of wired and wireless platforms, facilitating the emergence of new technologies, expanding access to communications and information for all, helping to connect quite distant places. So many of our countries, if you go to the capital city, you think, what's the problem? But actually, 10 minutes outside the capital city, you can see the connectivity problem very clearly. So economic inclusion, very important, and opportunities for women, entrepreneurs, particularly young people, and people who live in those less developed regions. Just 18 months, this new initiative, we've already got 600 million euros worth of portfolio and projects, 32 projects. So it's really had a very good start, I think, this initiative. And I think my pledge is that we should do much more in this area in the coming 4 or 5 years. That's really where I want to go to. Some examples, just to bring it very quickly to life. Digital cable systems in Romania, aiming to substantially increase fixed broadband penetration rate in the country's rural areas. 2 recent digital switchover projects in Serbia and Georgia, helping those countries shift to more efficient and advanced broadcasting technologies. As you can see, given our regions, the regions are very different where we work, and they're at different stages of transition. Some of them, like Estonia, for example, is already very competitive worldwide. So there, we're getting them to devise innovations for others. For others, like in Central Asia, the priority there is really to enhance their ability to adapt and adopt the existing best practices and technologies. So our strategy is very varied according to the countries we're talking about. I hope that gives you a strong sense of our commitment and what we're trying to do in this space, but definitely a big supporter of this initiative. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Suma, and thanks for giving us some concrete examples of what can be done. I'd like to turn next to someone who has been an incredible champion of digital inclusion and has really made her words count in terms of deeds, and that is Mitchell Baker of the Mozilla Foundation. So please, Mitchell.
There we go. It's quite wonderful to be here. Mozilla is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the mission that the internet should be a global public resource, open and accessible to all. So this initiative is dear to our hearts. I've been working on this since 1994, since the World Wide Web and the internet first entered consumer life. And it has become a mission that has drawn and engages thousands of people, volunteers all over the world, because the possibility of an open internet that's open and accessible and allows individuals opportunity to improve their own lives is so powerful. And so what Mozilla is doing today is a couple things: building open technology, which we share the view it must be at the center. Open is where opportunity occurs, and the current global status quo is not the best place for global development. So an open internet is a key to development that is inclusive, sustainable, equitable, and innovative. We also build communities of people globally who are engaged in the internet and want to help. So for digital literacy, for access, for building a citizenry that has more ability to use the internet as it's there, more understanding of what's possible, more confidence, we have been growing communities of people pretty much everywhere who are doing that themselves on a grassroots basis, interested in partnerships and eager to actually do more. We have a couple things in mind to specifically engage with this initiative and support it. By the end of this year, we will launch a challenge, contest, prize, challenge of some sort, based on new thinking, innovative thinking for internet access for the entire internet for all. So that access is to all content on the internet for all people. And so that needs new business models, new finance models, new thinking, new partnerships, public, private, and I believe citizen engagement in that. So we will launch that challenge. In addition, our existing volunteer communities, we are engaging with UN Women on a pilot for tuning that for women and girls specifically in Kenya and South Africa, and in combination with that, developing a global hub for resource for all Mozilla communities and anyone interested in partnership focused on women, girls, and technology. So we're very happy to see this initiative, very interested to engage. Thank all of you for being here and look forward to more. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitchell, and thanks for all you've been doing for so many years. You've really been the pioneer in this whole field. Speaking of technology, I think something is malfunctioning with ours because where our clock sort of is going haywire. So I'm hoping that can get fixed so we can stay on schedule. And I am very much looking forward now to hearing from the set of speakers to talk about what we're doing. And our first one is Minister of Finance from Finland, Alexander Stubb.
Thank you very much. Before my 3 points, I wanted to start with a thank you to the World Bank because your Wi-Fi connection is extremely fast. Good broadband. There's only one problem. I think the password is extremely complicated. So if I may suggest, the similar system that we have at Helsinki Airport is basically free Wi-Fi, no passwords. That makes life easier. 3 brief points, actually carrying on to what President Kim said, Secretary Kerry, and also Bill. On a personal note, the first one is on the 4th Industrial Revolution, which President Kim mentioned. I firmly believe in it as well. You know, when you talk about digitalization, robotization, Internet of Things, 3D printing, artificial intelligence, the rest of it. I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old at home. They will not remember time before the smartphone. They will be printing their sneakers on a 3D printer. Their children will go to school with vehicles that don't have drivers. And we are already nowadays getting diagnosed better and more proficiently by computers than sometimes by doctors. So that's why I think that this initiative is an extremely good part of the work that is done on an international level. By the way, as a finance minister, I don't think that in the future we will have traditional money either. I think digitalization will lead to blockchain, which will lead to different types of currencies floating around the world, and we need to be aware of that. The second point I wanted to make is that this is going to change the world completely. It'll change business-to-business relations, it'll change country-to-country relations, it'll change human relations, it'll change developed, undeveloped country relations, it'll change the face of trade as well. So in that sense, for us to help everyone to get access, as the Global Connect initiative does, I think it's the best thing that we can possibly do. And therefore, I carry on what Secretary Kerry said. The telecoms revolution in the 1990s, Finland and Nokia, for instance, was a huge thing. But the digitalization or the 4th Industrial Revolution will probably be 100 times bigger. And this will change the face of the earth in the next 15 years, including jobs and labor relations. And my final point then is about the pledge. From our development money, we have given over the years approximately 100 million euros to different kinds of digitalization projects, which doesn't sound much to you, but I come from a small country. And what we wanted to do today was to pledge $1 million to the World Bank Digital Development Partnership Fund, just to push the initiatives forward. I think it's been a great discussion so far, and looking forward to getting more on the initiatives. Thanks.
Great, thank you, and thank you for your active participation. The amount is less important than the participation, and and so we appreciate it and your endorsement. The next speaker is the Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Union, Hulin Zhao, who had graced us yesterday with his presence at the IEEE Forum, and also serves as the co-chairman of the UN Broadband Commission, and has himself worked in this field for a very, very long time. And so we're looking forward to your insights.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kathy. It's really a great pleasure to be here with you at this panel. And ITU, as you have just heard, is a UN specialized agency for information and telecommunication technologies, and strongly support all the initiatives that work towards connecting people, particularly connecting people not connected yet. At our ITU Plenary Presidential Conference held in Busan 2014, we set up a Connect 2020 agenda. And in that agenda, we set up concrete goals to connect the people by the end of 2020 to 60% of the population, based from almost 40% at that moment, so which means we have to connect the next 1.5 billion people online. So therefore, when we heard State Department launch this project to connect the next 1.5 billion last September, I was invited by Kathy also to join his launch. I was really excited, and today I also honored her invitation to join this meeting, because we have not only telecom stakeholders, engineers, administration ministers, regulators, but also we have financial ministers. That is another great step we appreciate very much. And ITU is committed to continue to help all these initiatives, and we have our statistics, and we like to continue to monitoring the progress and identify the areas we can help address the missing link and the weak link. ITU also, as Kerry just mentioned, that ITU and UNESCO set up UN Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development. I, together with Director General of UNESCO, as co-chair of this. And then we are very pleased to have Kathy to join us at the commissioners, and Tom was there as well. And we look for good opportunities to have your active contributions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is a flash now. I don't have my long list here. I don't want to, to waste your time and block the others. I think that this one particular issue that we talked about $450 billion President World Bank just mentioned, and this is big money. Where to find that money? But we need this money to connect the 1.5 billion more people online. It's indeed a good question, but I think that if we work together, we encourage public-private investment. We create. IT is working very hard with our administration members, stakeholders, to create a good environment for investment. And today, with the presence of our financial ministers, I heard a lot of good suggestions from financial ministers. I'm very confident this goal to connect 1.5 billion more people online by 2020 will be achieved. No, I'm going to finish now. Don't worry about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we all know that ICT is a great enabler for achieving our sustainable development goals, 17 goals, and without ICT we cannot really reach that goals. And here there is one thing I'd like just to highlight, that it's public perception that the ICT, particularly telecom, is a profit-making industry. It's self-sustainable, and there will be no need for further support. I think that is very dangerous for us. And indeed, we have just heard from Telenor that they need support from government and for their businesses. And indeed, we have areas where people expect for connections. For example, I was in Tonga. I visited one school during my very short visit. This school has 1,400 students, high school, where the Deputy Prime Minister graduated. I visited that school. There's no connection of internet. There was no Wi-Fi connection either. So that's things like that still existed. So this is the real problem for us, and we need to work together to help our industry, to encourage industry to come with us. And I think that this is a message I like to highlight. So, Kerry, I think that I have to stop now. But anyway, I enjoy very much this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all you're doing through the ITU. Our next speaker is going to read a statement from the Minister of Communications and Information Technology of India, Ravi Shankar Prasad. Minister Prasad very much wanted to be here and is very much dedicated to connecting. India has made some very bold policy moves recently towards that end, and so the Deputy Chief of Mission, Ambassador Tranjit Singh Sandhu, is going to read his statement. Please.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Minister Prasad very much regrets to personally not participate this morning. In his words, I believe that this initiative of the US State Department and the World Bank will further various global initiatives in regard to internet access for all. In the 21st century, digital economy has emerged as a key driver for global economic growth, thereby effectively reducing resource and energy use. It is my firm belief that digital economy will effectively help address common global challenges, including energy, environment, and inequality, and thereby contribute to a more integrated and cooperative existence. However, due to uneven distribution of digital resources, including access to internet, have posed challenges with regard to outreach of the benefits to all sections and regions globally. Schemes like Digital India, Make in India, Skill India, Startup India are all transformational in nature, seeking to bridge the digital divide and make India a digitally empowered society. India today is a home to 1 billion plus mobile phones, 400 million internet connections, and 1 million Indians have unique digital identity. Some of our path-breaking initiatives like banking the unbanked, funding the unfunded, pensioning the unpensioned, and securing the unsecured are being accelerated through robust employment of digital platforms. In India, government has taken some very concrete steps in promotion of digital economy, which includes the launch of a mega Digital India program in July 2015. Under this program, our government has embarked on a holistic roadmap to transform India into a digitally empowered society and a knowledge-based economy. We have launched a BharatNet project under the Digital India program, wherein 1 GB connectivity is proposed to be operationalized into the village panchayat level by 2019. With various initiatives for effective implementation, the project is progressing well towards achieving the deliverables. Common service centers are being created in every village panchayat of the country and are being used to provide the digital delivery of services to common people near their doorsteps. Such initiatives and programs under the Digital India program will come in a long way to create the digital infrastructure as a key for effective governance. Global Connectivity Initiative launched by the US Department of State with support of the World Bank, seeking to bring 1.5 billion additional people online by 2020, is a welcome initiative, and it has India's appreciation. I extend my warm wishes for this morning's event and all success for this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we get the privilege of hearing from Jinli Chun, who is the president of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, our newest investment bank, and we're very interested for your comments and for your innovation as the newest bank. So please.
Thank you. Thank you, Under Secretary Novelli. Thank you very much for inviting me to attend this conference and to represent the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank at this Global Connect initiative proposed by the U.S. State Department and cooperated with the support of the World Bank. As you know, the AIIB's mandate is to foster sustainable economic development, create wealth, and improve infrastructure connectivity in Asia, and emerging market economies in other areas. By investing in infrastructure and other productive sectors, we also aim to promote regional cooperation and partnership in addressing development challenges by working in close collaboration with the World Bank, ADB, EBRD, EIB, IADB, and other multilateral and bilateral development institutions. Investment in the internet as a form of digital infrastructure that boosts connectivity and integration certainly deserves AIB's strong support, and is certainly within the scope of our business and something in which AIB can promote. AIB believes that Global Connect initiative is an important policy as it fosters connectivity and works towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, all of which is consistent with our mandate. Digital connectivity is very important for poverty reduction. Information flow to the people who live in the remote and marginal areas who are having daily struggle wrestling a meager livelihood from local conditions, poorly serviced by infrastructure and digital connectivity. I think their fate has to be changed. The kids in those areas are stunted in their intellectual development because of a poor access to education. I think digital connectivity can provide the best of educations to them as if they were living in the major cities. So we believe it's very much important for AIB to help promote digital connectivity. I think by 2020, having an additional 1.5 billion people connected to the internet will really provide a meaningful and significant boost to social and economic development. Finally, I'd like to say it's very much important for us to understand that cyberspace and digital connectivity should promote national, regional, and global prosperity and stability. And it's important to crack down on cyberspace crimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the support of AIB. We actually are on time, and we have 5 minutes for lightning interventions from the floor. And I know that Sweden would like to make one, so I'll call on them first.
Thank you, Undersecretary Novelli, and thanks to the United States and to the World Bank for your leadership on this crucial issue. Sweden strongly supports the Global Connect initiative and its principles, and we believe that ICTs and the internet are indeed crucial enablers of the Agenda 2030. My country has been working on ICT and development issues since the late 90s in various forms, building infrastructure, setting up training programs, and helping countries to improve regulation and institutions. And just last year, in 2015, Sweden provided $74 million in support to ICT-related projects in developing countries. And the Swedish company Ericsson here today joined this initiative at its inception, and is a natural partner in meeting the goals of the Global Connect initiative. Let me also welcome the close partnership and collaboration between SIDA and USAID, including in the Challenge Fund Making All Voices Count, where ICT is used to strengthen democracy. And let me make 2 final points. First, internet connectivity should be an integral part of all national development strategies. We believe internet connectivity fosters data-driven innovation and digital transformation. And secondly, without crowding out private investments, we should encourage innovative communication solutions built on proven industry-driven global specifications and standards that provide for rapid to market and cost-effective extension of connectivity to underserved and remote areas. And apart from that, I think I could align my country with the points also made by Minister of Finance from Finland, Alexander Stubb. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all Sweden's doing. Our second lightning intervention would be from Greta Faremo of the UN, Secretary General of the UN OPS.
So thank you very much, Madam Chair and Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Executive Director of UNOPS, the Office of Project Services. We provide services and we are part of the UN family, but merely focused on implementation. So we're working in more than 80 countries and having infrastructure, project management, and procurement as our core mandate. I listen to all the interventions and think about the practical implications. So in all the infrastructure projects that we're doing, we see that it's all about planning. So how do we start the planning process early enough to make sure that we also include connectivity and the practical things that are needed to promote that? I would suggest that we commit to the slogan, let's only dig once. It will be so much cheaper, and it will be so much more efficient, and it is so hard to do. But again, making sure that it's included early in the planning will make such a difference, and UNOPS stands ready to support that in making it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, that's music to my ears. And now we have, I see 2, Belgium, Estonia, and is there one over here as well? I can't see your tag. It's Korea. Okay, so Belgium, Estonia, then Korea.
Thank you very much, Madam Undersecretary, and congratulations for yet again having convened us around this table, and thank you also to all the partners around the table. I speak on behalf of the Vice Prime Minister, very much connected to this issue, if I may say so, and particularly to the question of mainstreaming. We do that in terms of domestic policies, and he's very much looking forward to mainstreaming also at this point in our development policies. He just asked me to raise 3 very topical questions, and I will be extremely short. With regard to the international telecommunication unions, and thank you very much for your intervention, we were wondering what the connection is between our initiative here, the Global Connect initiative, and the World Summit on Information Society, how one relates to another. The second point that he asked me briefly to raise is we aim at including, once again, 1.5 billion people through this initiative by 2020. The outstanding population, as far as we know, is 4.8. 4.8 less 1.4 leaves 3.4 out there. What are the plannings for the future, but particularly with regard to the 1.5? Are these going to be the people who are essentially living in rural regions, Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, because there is also a part, as you very well know, that is already living in urban environments, and whether there is some arbitration there going on. And the last point that he asked me briefly to raise is when nations commit to laying out infrastructure on which they can build this connectivity, does that also mean that the nation commits itself to ensuring net neutrality? Because that's a close concern for all of us. But thank you very much for your attention.
Great, thanks. I think we should turn to the other speakers before we get to the questions. So, Estonia.
Thank you very much for the invitation to this event, and we do very much support this initiative. From Estonian perspective, we wanted to emphasize that we should not take it as a mere infrastructure project, but should also focus on, in parallel, also on the content, so to actually create better economic opportunities, better access to education or healthcare, to create more transparent, open, and efficient government. Estonia has, during the last decades, invested heavily in creating different public e-solutions, and we have also shared our knowledge and the solutions we have created, and we have already reached close to 50 countries worldwide. And in the sense, we are very much ready to continue this knowledge sharing and with specific focus on different e-governance solutions. Also, today mentioned interoperability of the different government systems, e-education, and of course, cyber security as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Undersecretary Novelli. I appreciate U.S. State Department and the World Bank for inviting Korea to this meaningful event. I believe that this Global Connect initiative is a very important international development scheme which enables us to narrow down development gaps by bridging the digital divide in the world. I just underline one important thing. The impact of digital technology, especially internet, goes well beyond the personal sphere. Digital technologies have transformed the market, given rise to new industries, accelerated research, and improved healthcare, making our society more advanced. As long as digital divide exists, people cannot share the benefit equally from the technology advancement. The wealth gap between developing and developed countries might be widening more and more by the different level of internet. So, by increasing the connectivity through internet, we can narrow down the global digital divide, will ultimately contribute to reducing poverty and stimulating economic growth in the developing world. Recently, Korea co-financed with IDB the broadband network project of $50 million in Nicaragua. In the future, Korea will work together with the GCI by fully utilizing Korea's expertise and experience. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we only at this point have time for one more, and Japan was the next one up. What I would say is if everybody follows their time in the next segment, we will have time for those who have raised their cards to speak after that. So just think about that when you're speaking, that we be considerate and let everybody talk. Japan.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Novelli. Japan appreciates the Global Connect initiative, which catalyzes various activities to improve connectivity and bridges data divide through the multi-stakeholder approach. Japan welcomes these undertakings and would like to express our support. We have experience and knowledge of promoting quality broadband infrastructure in Asian region, preparing comprehensive support measures, including human resource development in this field. Japan also established public-private fund for assisting private investment in ICT infrastructure last November. I'd like to refer to 3 points that we think important. Firstly, it is necessary that all stakeholders that develop ICT infrastructure have common understandings and to exchange views. In this regard, this event is very meaningful, and I think it is important to continue this kind of efforts. Secondly, ICT has been developing rapidly in such areas as IoT, 5G, AI. Especially advanced wireless technology will contribute to bridging the digital divide in developing countries. We have to utilize the benefit of ICT development under technology-neutral principle. Thirdly, investment should be made taking into consideration conditions of relevant countries, and it is required to provide an open market and fair competitive policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we're going to move on to our last segment of this event, which is we've talked about why does this matter and what are people doing now, and the next piece is where are we going from here. And I'm very delighted to to turn this over to our next speaker, who is James Tacklett, the CEO of American Tower, who has been doing it, walking the walk, having 150,000 towers in 14 countries on 5 continents. And Jim, we'll look forward to your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Undersecretary Novelli, distinguished ministers, and my fellow industry colleagues. My team at American Tower and I are heavily involved, as Kathy said, in expanding global broadband connectivity already around the world. Our company is a global leader in the telecom infrastructure industry. We do the often difficult physical work on the ground in both developed and developing markets to build and operate essential transmission towers and other sites to provide mobile communications and internet. It's literally dirt, concrete, and steel. To be truly successful in achieving the important objectives of the Global Connect initiative, government and service providers must work together to address a number of real issues that inhibit the industry's ability to reach those that are currently unconnected. As Secretary Kerry and President Kim said, deploying truly effective and scalable mobile networks requires investments not in the millions, but in the billions of dollars and in each country. Industry's proven more than willing to fund these investments when the conditions are right. These conditions include availability of wireless spectrum at reasonable prices, as Sivi said, a stable, predictable regulatory environment, which is really critical for investments, and also consistent rules around the construction and operation of these transmission sites such as towers. But to achieve significant increases in the access and utility for the billions of people that remain unconnected, a further increase in the level of public-private partnership and innovation is also needed. We at American Tower have introduced a creative initiative to pursue this in the form of digital town squares at our tower sites. Working with some nonprofit partners, business partners, and governments, American Towers launched digital town square pilot projects in rural areas in India, and we plan to do the same in Nigeria soon. These town squares leverage the uninterrupted power supply and broadband link from the tower site to provide critical access to the internet, creating a platform for the unconnected to access many of the benefits that we've been discussing today. Education, healthcare, e-government as examples. And taking a further step towards global connectivity. In India, where we have installed educational kiosks at dozens of our sites, we're beginning to measure the results of the digital town squares and have found, indeed, that school children's scores improve when they have access to the internet through the kiosks at our towers. However, American Tower won't be able to do this alone at scale. We need partners in government, the nonprofit arena, and industry in order to further expand broadband reach to many, many more communities in these countries. We need government policies that promote shared telecommunication infrastructure and the build out of that infrastructure. And we'll also need partners to scale the Town Square pilot project to meet the incredible demand we're already seeing for these services. So working together, I do believe that we can make a big difference in reaching the 1.5 billion people that you're seeking. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jim. And now I'd like to recognize Marina Ruggieri of the IEEE and to thank her for the event yesterday that the IEEE has launched to really partner on this Global Connect initiative and bring that problem-solving engineering spirit to bear to this. So.
Thank you very much for the honor of speaking here. So, Undersecretary Novelli, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, IEEE is honored to support the U.S. State Department's Global Connect initiative. As the world's largest association of technologists and scientists, IEEE represents nearly 500,000 of members around the world in more than 160 countries. IEEE is working at the intersection of technology and policy, bringing to the forefront expertise from across technical domains. Connecting billions of new internet users requires open and transparent collaboration, coordination, and innovation across borders. IEEE believes that by supporting Global Connect and the other Internet Access initiative, it can help achieve the goal of providing 1.5 billion people with meaningful access to the Internet by 2020. IEEE has a portfolio of programs to support digital development and global connectivity expansion. One to note is the IEEE Internet Initiative, which draws upon our community to address the wide range of Internet-related challenges around security, safety, trust, privacy, governance, participation, fairness, and prosperity. Collectively, we promote education and capacity building, sharing of information, best practices, trustworthy open standard development. As Undersecretary Novelli highlighted in her introduction, and thank you for this, yesterday, in close collaboration with the World Bank, we convened a unique group of experts from around the globe to identify tangible solutions to bring connectivity to underserved segments. The intellectual harvest was rich and included topics beyond merely connecting individuals to the net, such as education on the benefits of being connected, critical elements of investment, strengthening technology connectivity capacity, and regulatory and policy factor for advancing connectivity. We, IEEE, are dedicated to continuing the discussion, notably during the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group meeting in the fall, and we look forward to collaborating with all interested in solving the Internet connectivity challenge. Yesterday, we also understood a very important thing, that in order to develop effectively the global connectivity, we need also to go locally. That's why we think that we need to organize the same type of multi-stakeholder event also in other parts of the globe. This is part of our agenda, and we wanted to share this thought with you, Undersecretary, because this could be a very important step forward. Access to the Internet is indispensable for the full participation in today's global society and in enabling more people around the globe to improve their lives. The Global Connect initiative is vital to accelerating that access. Aligned with our mission, IEEE is steadfast in our intent to support the Global Connect initiative to the benefit of humanity. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, Undersecretary, for giving to us the honor of hosting you yesterday in our event. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I think it's a great idea to take this on the road and to spread this out. Our next speaker is Megan Smith, who's the United States Chief Technology Officer. Megan comes to us. President Obama recognized Megan's talents and brought her from Silicon Valley to help modernize the U.S. government and to solve problems in new ways. And she has been an incredible advocate for Global Connect, and we welcome her.
Hello, thanks. This is a wonderful meeting, and I really resonate with everything and really agree with so much of what has already been said. My only addition is I wanted to focus on talent in two ways. The first one is, as Secretary Kerry talked about the investment in people, in a lot of ways it's an investment in talent. Yesterday, President Obama hosted the White House Science Fair, the 6th science fair of his administration, and we had 140 young people from across our country. And I would note that our theme was solving big challenges. And I noticed that almost every child had used the internet in some form to do their project. The one that I wanted to point out is Olivia, a 16-year-old who found a diagnostic for Ebola. She dropped the cost by 99.5%. And the test, instead of taking 12 hours, takes 30 minutes. I believe that the talent of the world is ready to come help us, especially our youth. And so the Global Connect project to me is not only about all of the things that we've spoken about, equity, but it's also very much about the talent of the world being unlocked to come do the passionate invention work that everyone would do on the planet. We shared a piece of paper called It Takes a Network, where the UN posted a call for submissions of things that people already were doing for the Sustainable Development Goals. And they received over 800 submissions from 100 countries. And so you should see the astonishing things that people are already up to. So sort of crowdsourcing our solutions. So I believe it takes a network to build a network. And I really thank everybody who's come together to do this. It will take all of us. Our colleagues from Estonia, noting that I think 50 countries now are working with you. I want to underline that they are sharing the code that has been written by the Estonians in the way that Mozilla is built, open source, so we can work in new and modern ways. The last point I would make is the talent of the IEEE and the engineers. So often in government, one of my experiences, and as Undersecretary Novelli said, I came from Silicon Valley in the tech world. I was on the MIT board. I've been an engineer, part of building mobile technologies, the internet, broadband communications in all different ways. I had no intention, I'll say it again, no intention to ever come to government. We already now in the last year have brought over 300 Americans who have built Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Dropbox, all of these products, and asked them to serve as full-time members of the US federal government. They're called the United States Digital Service. They join their colleagues. And that doesn't mean we want all of the engineers of our country to join our government, just like we would never want all of the doctors to become surgeon generals. But having at least a few of us who are in the room at the principal level in the conversation, because the world has become so digital and so technical and it's moving so fast, as our colleague from Finland said, we can no longer afford to just consult with our colleagues on the technical side. We need them in the room with us as we decide policy, because we often think of them as the as the implementation. We talk to them later. And it's really quite urgent if we want to accelerate our work that we bring the technical people into the room for the architectural conversation. And I left you with a map, because I think the sooner everyone in this room is really looking at your regions and thinking technically together in cross-functional networked teams, both financial people together with technical people and economists and operators and all of us together. We do have many million people on this planet now, technical people who have already built things for hundreds of millions of others. Why not bring them in the room in our government, like a Surgeon General, for this conversation, make sure they're here, and then partner so brilliantly with all of our public-private partnerships with our colleagues in industry and in the civil society world by having the person who speaks that language as a member of our government teams. So I'm there, Undersecretary, and thank you again for this initiative. It's one of the most important ones that we're doing in the world.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks for those fresh ideas. Now I'd like to turn to Luis Alberto Moreno, who's the president of the Inter-American Development Bank. And President Moreno has led digital connectivity initiatives and made it a real priority in IADB, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you very much, Undersecretary, and it's really inspiring what you hear on the table. And let me just begin by saying, much is talked about this so-called fourth industrial revolution and everything that everybody talks about, innovation. And I often think about this when I look at it from the perspective of Latin America, for that matter, for much of the emerging world. We missed the train of the industrial revolution. We cannot miss the train of this revolution. So let me just give you and share with you some figures of how this looks from the perspective of Latin America. We have, between Latin America and the Caribbean, over 64 million people who are not covered neither by 3G or 4G infrastructure. And moreover, there's about 360 billion people who are not subscribed to any form of broadband services. Now, that's the reason why we at the Inter-American Development Bank have been working very actively to fill this gap. And this was really at the behest of the government of Brazil, a number of years ago. He said, you gotta do more on this space. And so we began by doing a number of things. First of all, to create what we call a broadband special program, understanding that everything begins with connectivity. And therefore, we have really begun to lend substantial amounts of money to every country in Latin America, where on the one hand you have broadband, secondly, working on the development of public policies and governance models, because we've talked a lot about the benefits, but the regulatory aspects of this can make or break this whole process. and certainly to create the business climates and the level playing field such that competition can emerge, and finally, of course, the strengthening of institutions across government. This program today is helping to support the digital economy in all of our countries, in countries like Colombia, or Argentina, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, or Mexico, just to name a few. And here, you know, it is with donors like Korea where we have been able to use the level of blended finance that precisely makes this possible, because it's not just going to be with lending. You're going to need some kind of blended finance to make it work. So in addition to the infrastructure deployment, we also need to work on the demand side, such that citizens, small businesses, and public institutions have the applications to fully take advantage of this revolution. So far, this ecosystem, to really work, our people not only need access, but also services. Services that are affordable, secure, and above all, relevant to the particular needs of people. And here is where I think we can really trigger innovation that really can connect the world. As much as you were saying earlier, it is the innovators in different parts of the world that need to connect to others, because that's really the real solution. So in the end, probably the next genius coming out of the developing world is not going to be Zuckerberg, it's not going to be Jack Ma, it'll probably be Ramirez or Gurria, for that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we're going to get to President Gurria in a moment, but before that, we have a statement from Minister Dar of Pakistan, who was supposed to be here, and at the last minute there was a crisis in Pakistan and wasn't able to come. So this statement's going to be delivered by the Finance Secretary, Masood. So where are you? Yeah, okay, please.
Sorry, I hope this is not. It's a matter of great honor for me to speak on the Global Connect initiative, which has been initiated by President Obama to augment the efforts to achieve global connectivity targets under UN Sustainable Development Goals. The government of Pakistan is promoting increased connectivity through a series of initiatives to diffuse broadband penetration and encourage numerous applications in provision of public services so that the benefits of technology are widely distributed. We appreciate the US government for launching Global Connect initiative to provide internet access to an additional 1.5 billion people worldwide by 2020, and recognize the GCI will go a long way in achieving the UN's SDG of achieving internet access, universal internet access by 2030. The government of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif believes that the internet connectivity is as important for economic development as electricity, roads, rails, etc. According to the World Bank, Pakistan has made significant progress through an enabling environment in promoting mobile telephony as well as broadband because of enormous growth potential of the country and the private sector's entrepreneurial spirit. As a landmark progress for the future growth and development of ICT, Government of Pakistan has approved the Telecommunication Policy 2015. The policy basically aims to facilitate universal availability of broadband at an affordable cost and quality telecom services to be provided through open, competitive, and adequately regulated markets. The policy will help bridge digital divide in the country, create jobs, and serve the unserved and underserved parts of the country. We have auctioned 3G and 4G licenses that brought not only significant money to the exchequer, but also about $1.3 billion of investment in rolling out 3G, 4G networks and infrastructure in the country. By 2016, there were nearly 30 million broadband subscribers in the country, of which 26 million were using 3G, 4G services. Government of Pakistan is also gradually shifting public services on e-platforms. In this regard, debit cards have been issued to beneficiaries of Benazir income support programs, which will further be replaced with biometric cards particularly to enable women to draw funds from ATMs through simple fingerprints scan. The State Bank of Pakistan, and I'm glad Telenor has already noted this thing, in partnership with banking and financial institutions and telecom providers, has developed a robust policy and regulatory framework for mobile branchless banking to achieve universal financial inclusion in Pakistan. The revenues from universal service funds are utilized to provide telephone, internet, and broadband services and establish telecenters in remote parts of the country. Additionally, funds are also provided to promote a culture of innovation and research in the industry and academic institutions. The ICT industry is also being encouraged to develop applications that facilitate e-agriculture, e-health, e-learning, e-security, e-connectivity, and e-commerce. At the end, I would reaffirm Government of Pakistan's commitment to fully support all global initiatives and work programs, including the target-specific Global Connect initiative of State Department to achieve the global connectivity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the last word of this third session is from the head of the OECD, President Gurria. And we are very happy, President Gurria, to have been partnering with the OECD and for all the support you've given us and for bringing the OECD countries on board for this initiative. So please.
The OECD strongly supports and shares the objectives of the Kathy Novelli initiative. Let's see. Oh no, it's a Global Connect initiative. Sorry about that. There was a anyway. We're going to have this ministerial meeting in Cancun, the 21 to the 23rd of June. And one of the things we're going to be doing is precisely take this connectivity and take it national. Now, our motto in the OECD is better policies for better lives. And, you know, when you're talking about better policies, it's health, education, taxes, competition, innovation, the R&D, etc. And now connectivity is kind of going to be part of the better policies. You know, it's going to be part of the substantive better policies. We're going to be checking for that. We're going to be tracking it. We're going to be monitoring. And the skills question. And why do I say skills? Because it's not going to happen automatically. You have to develop the skills, upskill. You have to reskill for connectivity. Otherwise, the people are not going to be able to deal with the technology. And also, how to make the technology support the creation of skills, support education, support health, etc., rather than threaten it. The OECD has been developing broadband toolkits and competition toolkits. And that's the other message we wanted to leave. We have to develop competition so that this happens. In Mexico, after a lot of time without any competition, we put forward a report about how damaging it was not to have competition. Well, now in 3 to 4 years, we've gone from 50% of the firms to 80% of the firms with broadband in a very short period of time. Massive, and then in price falling. Because now it's more open. The same in Greece. The other question is go to 4 operators rather than only 3 operators. It is almost magic, but yes, when you got 4, things happen that don't happen when you only have 3. Now, we've been doing with the Inter-American Development Bank a holistic assessment about what's going on in Latin America, precisely not to miss the boat on this new revolution. And we're going to deliver precisely in the meeting in Cancun. We're going to deliver the results of the work. And of course, now we're talking to SUMA at the EBRD with the Asian Development Bank, Mr. Nakao, and the African Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure Bank. So it is possible to do 1.5 billion, Kathy. I think, like everything else, like Secretary Kerry said, 1 year we were already, beyond the target. This is going to happen, and we can make it happen. Together we can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was a perfect last intervention. And for some wrapping up remarks, and then I will make a very short wrapping up conclusion, we're going to turn to Pierre Gosselin of the World Bank.
Thank you very much, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure for the bank to be co-hosting this event organized by the State Department. A decade or two ago, many of us were actively helping developing countries opening up their telecommunications sectors. We had state-owned monopolies by and large, and we were really purposeful, proactively pushing the competition agenda, introducing new mobile licenses, setting up regulators, etc. At the time, the mobile phone in the 90s was seen as a luxury, not something people needed in developing countries. We have seen what impact the mobile revolution has had on growth, on development, and on social inclusion. So today we are at a point where a similar challenge is arising about broadband, about internet access, about access to information, basically. And we need to be equally deliberate and purposeful. And we had challenges and vested interest 2 decades ago to open up the telecom sector. We have challenges and vested interest today to maintain a certain status quo. So what does it mean for ministers of finance? And I'd like to outline maybe a few points, many of which have already been touched on today. First, we need your support for much needed sector reform. We need to reinvigorate competition in the sector, and competition in a new context, in a context of convergence of technologies, of telecommunications, information technologies, media. So we need your support for that. We need your support in creating an environment that will foster private sector investment, because that is where the bulk of the funding will come from to reach the next $1.5 billion and the billions thereafter. So we need your support for that to make it attractive for private investors to come in and invest in your countries. This may include also repurposing your universal service funds. In many countries, they're not well used. They're used for the wrong purposes. It's a small tool, but it can be an effective one. We need your support in shaping a more streamlined and integrated approach to e-government and e-services. In many countries, and not just developing countries, applies to other organizations as well. We have too many fragmented systems, too many separate initiatives, too many databases or systems that are not interoperable. Low-income countries cannot afford that. Low-income countries cannot afford this duplication of efforts. If we want to reach technology to reach, we need to be much more streamlined, and ministers of finance have a key role to play to ensure that platforms are developed that are interoperable, that can be shared among ministries and agencies and local government and state enterprise, etc., that people can benefit from e-services based on much more streamlined approaches. And finally, again, Jim mentioned it this morning, and others have mentioned it during the course of the discussion, keep taxation reasonable. How can we have affordable internet for all if in a country half of the sector revenue it goes to taxes, fees, etc.? It's just not possible. So it's really important to keep tax levels reasonable. When it comes to the World Bank, which you may wonder what is our role in this thing, we are helping about 60 countries today tackle this agenda or parts of that agenda, but we need help. First, I hear the call for increased lending for ICT, and I think my colleagues from other MDBs have heard it similarly, but in the end, we're banks and we lend for what our clients want to borrow for. So if you want more lending for ICT, for connectivity, please ask us and prioritize that in your country partnership frameworks or strategies with our organization. So we'd be happy to consider it. But so, and then from the development partners, public and private, we have set up this digital development partnership. We'd like to thank Finland for announcing their support today, and it's open to all of you, public and private. It's a platform where we want to work primarily to help developing country, in particular low-income developing country, achieve the potential of the internet and reap these digital dividends. So to conclude, Kathy, thank you very much again. Thank you all for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you, Pierre, and just to kind of try to pull this together in 1 minute, my lightning intervention, I think the fact that so many different entities came together today shows the power of connectivity. and that we all are vested in trying to move this forward. And it is very clear that we need innovation. The internet started with an innovation, and to take this forward, we need innovation in technology, in financing, and in business models. And so, we really need to look at that and how we can have many, many points of light here in moving that forward. We also need interconnection. We need interconnection within governments so that finance ministries and communications ministries and education and health ministries and economy ministries are all working together to bring this together. We need interconnection between governments and multilateral development banks in terms of setting priorities, in terms of actually carrying projects forward. And we need interconnection with those groups and the private sector, both in terms of actual projects, in terms of providing the talent that can be brought to bear in thinking differently, and in carrying forward not just connectivity, but the good policy, the sound policy that's going to make connectivity meaningful. So with all of that as our challenge, we're going to conclude this meeting and go forth and actually make this happen. And I want to thank all of you for your part in doing that. Thank you.